You pray, you wait, you believe, but the illness does not lift. For millions of believers, the agonizing wait for a physical healing that never arrives is a deeply isolating reality. Looking for answers often leads straight into a theological wall. One major camp, known as the Reformed or cessationist view, argues that miraculous healing was a temporary sign to validate the early church. In this framework, God frequently chooses not to heal today, actively using physical suffering to forge humility and build character. Cross the aisle and you hear the exact opposite. The charismatic or word of faith movement insists that physical healing was entirely paid for at the cross. To them, healing is always God's active will for the believer right now. These two views cannot coexist. They present entirely incompatible visions of God's nature and his ultimate design for human suffering. If the cessationist view holds true, believers are forced into passive acceptance. You must embrace a terminal diagnosis or a chronic illness as a direct disciplinary tool handed down from God. If the charismatic view is right, accepting that same illness means surrendering to a conquered enemy, tolerating a condition that Jesus Christ already broke. Resolving a debate with life or death consequences requires stepping away from modern podcast opinions. We have to open the ancient manuscripts and audit the specific legal language of the biblical texts. The foundation for how Christ handles human illness rests on two primary texts, Isaiah 53:4 and Matthew 8:17. In Isaiah, the Hebrew words nasa and sabal mean to bear a massive debt or carry a crushing burden. Matthew translates these into the Greek lambano and bastazo, describing lifting a heavy boulder. Together, these define a binding legal substitution. Jesus lifted humanity's physical decay. The linguistic verdict is clear. Jesus executed a literal transfer, removing the weight of sickness from the individual and bearing it himself. This evidence creates a profound tension with the cessationist claim that God uses disease for character building. If Jesus literally carried away the boulder of disease as a legal substitute, the view that God continues to assign sickness suggests God is demanding payment for a debt already settled. These specific linguistic roots present a significant challenge to the cessationist framework. If the atonement provided a literal discharge for illness, viewing sickness as a divine tool requires overlooking these ancient legal texts. But that raises an obvious, agonizing question. If the legal debt for healing was entirely paid at the cross, why are faithful Christians still getting sick today? This timeline illustrates the already but not yet framework. The present day sits in the friction between them. On the left, Jesus legally broke the power of sickness. The price is paid. On the right, our physical bodies remain bound to a decaying, fallen universe. Because the price has already been paid in full, sickness operates as an illegal intruder in the present day. It is a trespassing force, which validates the charismatic focus on active personal faith to push back against it. Sickness remains a reality simply because the friction of the not yet time frame is still here. In this model, physical decay is a byproduct of a fallen world, rather than a lesson authored by God. When your faith is strong, but healing is delayed by the time frame of the not yet, it causes severe spiritual whiplash and deep doubt. Jesus wept at the tomb of Lazarus while knowing he was moments away from raising him from the dead, establishing that grief is compatible with deep faith. God does not author the evil of sickness, but he is a master at redeeming the pain it causes in the human experience. When a believer remains sick, the global Christian community is called to step in with deep empathy, practical care, and comfort. It is never the time for theological lectures or assigning blame for hidden sin. We can permanently abandon the helpless resignation and passive acceptance taught by cessationism. Sickness functions as a legally defeated enemy trespassing on property already paid for by the cross.